Hey everybody, this is Jason. You're about to watch another episode of Blues Stories. Recently, our home got broken into, and they stole a bunch of stuff, including my computer. So I no longer have the fancy Blues Stories intro. Right now, I want to warn you that the next Blues Stories here contains some extremely graphic language. It's about Big Bad Smitty, and that guy was real. So if you have any kids around, be sure to put the headphones on, okay? But I hope you enjoy it. Big Bad Smitty, Blues Stories. Thank you. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Blues Stories. Today's Blues Stories is going to be about Big Bad Smitty. Well, I don't know, only the hardcore people are going to really remember the name Big Bad Smitty. Let me tell you the story of Big Bad Smitty. Back in 1996, I was playing a club in Jackson, Mississippi called Fields Cafe. I was playing the gig with Eric Deaton, who I had met while playing with Junior Kimbrough and R.L. Burnside. Eric Deaton has been mentioned in other blues stories. In off the street came this old black guy in a wheelchair, and he wanted to sit in. And I said no. There were a lot of people that wanted to sit in all the time down there at Fields Cafe on Ferris Street in Jackson, Mississippi. Beautiful, fun, sometimes dangerous Ferris Street. He came back with a copy of Living Blues magazine from 1991, and he was on the cover. So I let him sit in. He sounded just like Muddy Waters when he wanted to, and he sounded just like Howlin' Wolf when he wanted to. He had no legs. He had lost his legs from diabetes. He was incredible. So he continued to come around and sit in and play with us. And then once I went to visit him, this was before cell phones, of course, so you just would have to drive into the hood, and there would be Smitty. And he would get a check once a month for money, and he would use all of the check to buy crack, or almost all of it, and he wouldn't smoke the crack. He would just give it to women to hang out with him and do all kinds of stuff. I moved him in with me and Eric, and we tried to take care of him and stuff and get him fitted for prosthetic legs. And he was so mean to the nurses. And he talked like Howlin' Wolf. He was like, get away from me, bitch, you fucking cunt. Just the worst language you've ever heard. Just the reason I've taken so long to do a Blue Stories on Big Bad Smitty is I just don't know how to give it to you without the really extreme language. Okay, because you have to recognize that this guy never said one sentence without fuck, shit, motherfucker, pussy, dick, cock, all those words were in every single sentence, no matter where you brought him. Okay, no matter what company he was in. So anyway, here's a good one. So he tells me that he's from St. Louis and that he's huge back in St. Louis, and all I have to do is drive him up to this gig at BB's Jazz and Blues and Soups. And there'll be a line out the door, and everybody will want to see him. So we get in my Astro van, me, this crack whore that was hanging out with Smitty, and we drive to St. Louis for this gig that at BB's that they booked him. They booked him right away. We called him up. They booked him. They sent him an advance, which he used to bring this woman and me and the van and him to St. Louis. So he puts me in this crack hotel in East St. Louis. I'm like the only white guy for blocks and blocks and blocks, if not miles, right, in this place. And I'm in there. And then we go to the gig. And there's, just like he said, a line right out the door to see him. So we sit in the parking lot or like on the side of the street. And then we go in and everybody cheers just like he said they would. And they're all happy. And it's my job to open the show with this pickup band that he has in St. Louis, who's like full of like these amazing musicians. And the drummer, for example, is like a Juilliard graduate. And he's back in St. Louis playing, probably in his 40s, black guy, like in a suit and a tie. The whole band is in suit and ties. I'm in a suit and tie. I get up there, I open the show, and like scratch my back and help me and hip shake, right? You know, and Smitty's just not ready. So I keep doing more and more songs, and I keep introducing him, and he's just not there. Finally, he rolls up in his wheelchair and takes the microphone off the stage, and the stage is like 5 or 6 feet tall, and Smitty's down in the wheelchair, so we hand the microphone down to him, and it's this awkward silence, and the microphone bangs around, and there's this whole room full of about 300 people, and everybody's silent, and Smitty says, "Any single women in the house?" And the place is dead silent. And then he goes, again, "Any single women in the house?" And finally, this one big, fat black woman in the back raises her hand and says, "I'm single, Smitty." And he says, "Well, I'm married, bitch." And that's how the show starts. Okay, that's how we begin the show. All right. So everybody cheers and loves it. It's the funniest thing ever. And they think he's the greatest. The whole time I ever played with Smitty, all he did was insult the audience. Okay, constantly. And they loved it. They just thought it was the greatest thing. So here's my favorite story. So what Eric and I had this coffee shop gig. And there were all these goth kids at the coffee shop. And me and Eric had decided that Smitty wouldn't like doing this gig for whatever reason because there was all these kids there, and that we thought they wouldn't like Smitty. You have to realize this is before hipsters, okay? And this old black blues guy wasn't cool in 1996 or 7, or at least so we thought. So finally, Smitty is sick of us coming home with like $35 each, and is like, "I want to go do the gig." So we after so many times, we finally take him to the gig. So it's just electric guitar, harmonica, and Smitty singing, and we play, and they love him. The kids fucking love him. So afterwards, they're all up there to buy this CD that was on the High Tone label that had Hubert Sumlin on it, that we had finagled from the record company. I think they sent us like 14 copies or something for promotional purposes, which is, of course, Smitty selling instead of sending to the clubs. So like that I'm trying to book him in. So we get done, and there's this line of kids that want to buy CDs from Smitty, all these kids with piercings, and one of the kids comes up and he's got vampire fangs, okay, like attached to his teeth. And he says, "You know, listen, Big Bad Smitty, I just want to say you're the best. I love you. This was the best show ever, and I want to buy a CD. And Smitty's like, get the fuck away from me, Frankenstein. So, like, it was the best thing ever. It was over the microphone, and Smitty didn't even get the monster right, which made it 10 times better. And so, like, another time, this chick comes up, and he's like, what's your name, bitch? And she's like, Tinkerbell, and he's like, I'll ring your bell, right? Just like instantly, just nails like every little comment. He always had some perverted, horrible. There's like 3 stories I am not going to tell on Blue Stories that Smitty told me because they were so violent that they were like Jeffrey Dahmer type stuff. Okay, it was so horrific and so not funny. And it's funny. It's funny in a van at 3 in the morning, but I'm not putting it on YouTube. And it's just stories about mutilating people with barbed wire and just horrific things. Just the worst shit you can possibly imagine. And people just hollering, ow, and just awful shit. And like, fucking terrible. So yeah, just like, and the way he would treat like nurses and stuff was just awful. Like we tried to get him fitted. He called them cunts and you fucking cunt, fuck you know, just awful. Just like this like horrible like billy goat, this like old rotten billy goat, and like. I'll tell you though, man, like one time though, I got a little arrogant and I pushed him too hard with his wheelchair. And my buddy Jay Abel says to me, he goes, if Smitty had legs, you wouldn't push him like that. And the fucking, you know what? That was the goddamn truth. And Smitty had lost his legs, I think I already mentioned, from diabetes. But I did see a bunch of video of him when he had legs. And he was a big, bad dude. Don't get me wrong, he still was big and bad in those legs, even without legs. But Jay was right, I never would have done that, and I felt horrible the minute I did that. But I got to tell y'all, living with Smitty was not easy. It was really, really hard. And he was like a wild animal. And he wanted to be back there. And, you know, and by back there, what I mean, man, is living in a shotgun shack in Mississippi, like a 1 or 2 room shack in Mississippi, with no electricity, okay, with an extension cord running into the neighbor's house that had coming off of it a hot plate and a lamp. And that's how he lived, with nobody there to take care of him, with no legs if he needed to get down the stairs, all kinds of stuff like that. And that's actually how he wanted to live. And eventually he wanted to move out of the house and drop him back off there, and I had to. He moved back to St. Louis. I hope he was taken care of by family there. I think so. One day I was sitting at famous Frank Ward's AMF tire shop in Delray Beach, and there was AMF has a subscription to Jet magazine, the all black little magazine, and I picked up a copy and I opened it up, to an obituary of Big Bad Smitty, and I didn't realize I was going to get emotional during this. I thought this was just going to be a funny one. I really love that old man. And he was great. And he taught me a lot. He knew about every harmonica position. And he used to tell me what position to play in. And he used to tell me what position Little Walter played in. He loved Little Walter more than anything. He used to play a lot of old Jimmy Rogers records for me and make me listen to the Little Walter parts and make me play them note for note. And if I didn't play them right, he'd yell at me on stage. I don't even know if I'm going to put this up. Thanks, babe. Anyway, Big Bad Smitty was amazing. Check him out. He's more than a Howlin' Wolf imitation. He was more than a Muddy Waters imitator. He was a real scholar, and he was a real lover of traditional blues and American folk blues. And I miss him a lot, and I wish everybody knew how great he was. Props to Living Blues magazine for putting him on the cover back in the day. I'm out.